In the interests of punctuality, I think we'll get going. So good morning and welcome. My name is James and I'm the Client Services Director here with GradConnection. This morning, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, work and live today, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, celebrating their diversity of the Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of this place that we now call Australia. So I've got a little presentation today to kick us off. That should be it. So hi, welcome. My name's James again. I'm the Client Services Director here at GradConnection. And thanks for coming along today, first of all. We set up this session, I guess, to reach out to those people who we hadn't, as far as the system was telling us, we hadn't really had much contact with over the last sort of 9 months. And I thought before we close out the year and start going into silly season, one last piece of kind of useful content, if you are planning on going out to market during the traditional peak season in March 2021, it might be useful for us to sort of provide you with a little bit of a summary of what happened this year. So I'll just start with a little bit of a reminder about who GradConnection are. We were started in 2008. It's a funny story, really. A couple of graduates working for Westpac were tasked on the HR rotation with looking into how Westpac might better promote its graduate program. And they thought they'd ask these 2 new grads because they were kind of fresh out of that process and might be able to lend something useful to the conversation. So when that team looked at the market in Australia, they were surprised to find that there wasn't yet, this back in 2008, an online jobs board. So rather than stay around at Westpac, they actually left the Westpac graduate program and set up GradConnection on their own. And the rest, as they say, is history. In 2019, GradConnection was acquired wholly by Seek, and we now kind of sit under that umbrella, but we've remained the #1 job search tool for students and recent graduates in Australia. Some recent surveys put us right at the top when young people, or mainly young people, are looking for work either during university or just coming out of university, with 92% likely to use us for employment and further study opportunity search. So at any one time, we've got close to about 275,000 active users on our website. And at the moment, we're averaging around about 1 million page views a month and close to 125,000 unique visitors every month, rising, of course, as I'll show you some numbers which are quite interesting for this year. So just there we are. That's what I wanted it to do. So we're not just a jobs board. The main way that people use GradConnection is by creating an employer profile, which is visible all year round. So students, whether they're in their first year or last year or a recent graduate, can be exposed to an employer brand and be really in that discovery phase about who they might want to work for 12 months of the year, so that when you do have a relevant opportunity, you've already done that groundwork and brand building piece. One of the benefits and big differences with GradConnection, unlike a traditional kind of jobs board model, is that with your employer profile, you can actually post as many ads or opportunities as you like, whether that is for graduate roles, internships, clerkships, work experience, entry level, part-time roles. The choice is yours. And this year we've seen more and more employers using the opportunity to post information about webinars, virtual kind of get to know you, meet and greet sessions, as well as the kind of traditional roles and internship piece. And if it hadn't been for COVID-19, I would have continued as usual with a kind of a polished sales presentation. But this year, as we all know, has been a bit of a shocker. and I was trying to figure out what sort of graphic is appropriate. And I think this one really resonates for me. This was on the 31st of March 2020. It was at the end of my first week at GradConnection. And the dark red on the map represents those countries with complete border closure, something that I don't think anybody on this call today would have ever expected to happen in their lifetime. So I'm one of those people that started a new job at the beginning of COVID and has never actually done a day's work in the office. Very strange experience, very strange way to start a new job. And I think, you know, I've learned a lot about myself. I think the organization's learned a lot about, what's the word for this year? Pivoting the onboarding process in the future for the things that it didn't include, that we never realized that it should include. I think we've all learned a lot about ourselves this year and the organizations that we engage with. And I hope that yours has been, albeit a challenging experience, a positive experience. I can certainly say that mine has been both of those things. So rather than kind of jump into what we do and how we do it, I thought it might be useful to give you a kind of summary of what's happened this year. Now we're kind of getting to the end. We can sort of look back and say, you know, what exactly happened. So I guess it wasn't all doom and gloom. In fact, 76% of employers that we surveyed, and we've been surveying our data set more often than ever before this year, but 76% of employers ended up going to market for early talent this year. What's interesting is that the 24% that didn't go to market, 9% were postponed or did not plan to recruit anyway. And less than 5% report that they actually cancelled early talent recruitment due to COVID-19. So I must stress that even though this has been a super challenging year for everyone, you know, it wasn't all doom and gloom. I guess, you know, the thing that we do need to acknowledge is that that second kind of big number there, 25% of early talent recruiters that we surveyed reduced their actual early talent recruitment numbers by more than 25% in terms of overall volume. So we've seen some shifts, but as I say, not all doom and gloom. So a quick look now at the numbers of campaigns for graduate roles on the GradConnection website. So as we were kind of going into the year, everything looked good. The year-on-year numbers were kind of tracking pretty okay. And we saw a handful of clients pull out of the market as the kind of uncertainty and chaos began. But it honestly wasn't really until kind of middle of April when we really started to see a kind of change in what was happening. And it was kind of over May and June when, for the first time ever, we saw a contraction in the number of graduate roles year on year since 2008 being posted to market, that we actually started to get a little bit concerned. And I think that was indicative of what was going on in Victoria over that period, and the uncertainty elsewhere in the country, and a lot of businesses just kind of sitting safely and waiting to see what happened. But then interestingly, you'll see by September, where we've got the final numbers to at the moment, we'd seen it return to 2019 levels, which is very positive. I think some of the news that I was watching yesterday, that the economy seems to be recovering faster than the government and the experts thought, is certainly holding true in the graduate space. And we've actually seen October, November's numbers, I can share with you, are in fact higher than the 2019 campaigns. We're actually seeing people return to the market for a second time. We're seeing people come to market for the first time this year, later on in the day, which is quite unusual. And we're seeing, a small number of businesses that have increased their workload due to COVID-19 actually coming to market that we wouldn't have expected at all. Kind of moving on, looking at what early talent has been doing on our website, the grey and the yellow lines there, we look at job searches for graduate roles 2019 against 2020. And I think, very interesting for this year. We have not seen the drop-off in, despite seeing the traditional drop-off in roles, we have not seen the traditional drop-off in traffic on the website. The cohort that we are engaging with has remained highly interested in what's going on in market throughout the whole of this piece. And then you'll see kind of down towards the bottom of the graph, kind of the July, August numbers, we've actually seen the number of applications rise quite considerably. That's one of the things that's come out in student surveys this year, that most students have applied to more jobs than they had expected to pre-COVID. If you do have any questions for today's session, please feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A piece. I will try and keep an eye on it throughout the session and answer questions as we go, but happy to answer any questions at the end as well. So here, quick look at the campaigns listed on GradConnection 2019-20 for internship roles. What we did see this year is a massive contraction in the number of internship roles that normally go out to market across that kind of June, July, August piece. Again, we've started to see the numbers come back slightly. People coming to market late, I think, as confidence has been restored and the changing situation in Victoria. We're now seeing an awful lot of clients that we're talking to right now kind of figuring out how they deliver internships in a work from home or a one day a week in the office type scenario. Obviously much easier for some organizations than others. I'll come on to a little bit more about how people have pivoted and tweaked internship content over the last wee while as well. And then looking at the internships searches and applications. So if we look at the application data, it's kind of sitting pretty constant. It's the same number of people looking for, applying for applications that had been historically. But again, we've seen this huge spike this year. I think as uncertainty, was at its peak, people were looking more and more for what they can do to bolster their personal situation. And that's been one of the real kind of big learnings for us this year, I think, is that the student cohort are a pretty resilient bunch. They adapted very quickly to the idea of, working from home, that conditions were changing, that employers didn't know, exactly what volumes looked like, exactly what the process was going to look like. And I think, for the most part, they have coped incredibly well and actually, done things over and above what we might have expected of them during a kind of crisis or pandemic, and really been out there looking for opportunities to make sure that, they're doing the very best they can to look after their own kind of future and career whilst all this has been going on. So these numbers were from client data at the end of September, beginning of October. And we were looking at the impact on 2021 hires. So that is the people that have applied for jobs, usually during the first half of 2020, who would be starting those roles in early 2021. For the most, almost for 50%, 42% there, no changes to the number of hires expected. This is the most up-to-date data that we've got, but you'll see there, sort of 20 or 30 odd percent reducing their numbers, some quite significantly in the end. but there's glimmers of hope, increasing not COVID related 13% and increasing COVID related 1%, mainly in the fintech space. So kind of, with that sort of context, I wanted to share with you a little bit more about what we've been doing at GradConnection to kind of change the way that our business works and is serving both hirers and student job seekers and recent graduate job seekers over the last few months as well. We've made some quite significant changes to the way our site works in terms of search and how jobs are better presented to students. With more traffic on the site, it showed up some of the things that we needed to improve, and that's been really useful for us. We've kind of made it much easier for people to be able to post one-off job ads and really target those job ads in a much better way. I think we've got a little example of the job ad there. And one of the things that we've had time, I guess, to sit back and think about this year is how we explain the way the site works. And it's really super simple. It's 3 easy steps: brand, amplify, and target. So brand, as I said before, the way most organizations work with us is through an employer profile, and you choose one that suits your organization, really depending on the number of disciplines, study disciplines that you want to target and be in front of. We've got various tiers and some special tiers for not-for-profits, STEM and healthcare. Then we have some booster products, which make sure your kind of brand is front and center, and you can choose some diversity badges to demonstrate the way in which you're engaging with particular groups, such as the LGBTIQ community or the Aboriginal Torres Island straight community. Then it's all about amplifying, so building your presence on our platform with banners, boosters, blogs. We've really looked at how we create much richer content for students and provide them with a lot more support around choosing an employer and choosing an industry for some people to work in, as opposed to really just a kind of straight job ad. And then we've got much better with targeting activities this year, generally quite time sensitive. Student webinars have proved incredibly popular. We've run panel-based webinars for legal employers, for the investment banking community, for a set of generalist recruitment programs as well. They've been incredibly successful this year. So just an example here of what an employer profile looks like. So fully kind of branded. On the left-hand side, where it says employer navigation, they're all the different kind of pages on this microsite that you get as part of your employer profile. And it really is up to the individual employer what they want those pages to look like, what they're highlighting, and then the content in them. And our account management team is always happy to help with kind of advising on what sort of content is going to work best for your brand and the types of students that you're looking to engage with. Then we've got an example here of the job ad, and you'll see there on the right hand side, the job type, the disciplines that it's relevant for, the working rights that it's relevant for, the locations that the job is available, all there for the student or job seeker to make a decision on whether to take it to the next stage. An example here of how our homepage is now working. The kind of logos and the banners, they're available to different employers at different times of the year to help promote traffic to their kind of microsite or the individual employer profiles. And then hugely popular over the last kind of 12 months has been the opportunity to create customized EDMs or emails out to specific groups of students, whether they be groups studying a particular discipline, groups from a particular university, or a mix of the two. we can create very targeted email lists to encourage applications or promote particular events that you might have that you want students to attend, whether they're physical or virtual events. One thing that we've kind of really beefed up over the last 6 months is the campaign reports. So here's an example from Deloitte, looking at what we report in terms of activity on the employer profile page. You get to know which universities you're driving traffic from. You get to know about the working rights of people that are looking at your page and making applications, the gender, the disciplines that you're attracting, and then really interesting is competitor analysis. What are which employers are students also looking at when they look at your page? And it's quite interesting sometimes that they can be, quite a mix of kind of those organizations who you would see your competitors as being, and those can come as a complete surprise. And happy to share more about that information with you. One of the other things that we don't probably talk about enough is the GradConnection campus network. And that's a white label of the GradConnection jobs board and website that we feed into a number of universities, both in Australia and overseas, with the feed of international jobs as well as domestic jobs. We've seen traffic on those white label websites go up in line with the sort of traffic increases that we've been seeing on our commercial site. What that means when you post a job or have your employer profile live with GradConnection is that it doesn't just go out on our commercial site, it's fed where relevant into as many of the campus instances as we've got as well. And an example of some of the ones that we're working with both at home and overseas there for you. As I said earlier, one of the things that we've been doing this year is really talking to our client groups, both employers, universities, and of course students. The killer stat for me this year is this one here. 84% of students reporting that they would join an organization for employment without ever having met anyone in person. And I think, that as a standalone stat is really telling of the resilience and ability to adapt that students have demonstrated, the self-awareness that they've had to have to kind of get to grips with what's going on in order to find employment. Some more information here from students. There we go, 53.29% likely to apply to more potential employers this year. I don't know whether to be happy about this one or upset. I expect to have to take a job I don't really want, 42.22%. What does that really mean? Is it an acknowledgement that the economy, the structure of the economy has shifted and there's a realization that their plans might need to have changed? Or is it sort of defeatist? I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions, but I think, for me more than ever, that means that if you are on the hunt for early talent to hire in 2021, or you want to be thinking about building your talent pipeline in 2021, now more than ever, being in market with your employer brand, even if there aren't live opportunities immediately for that employer brand, and being in conversation as early as possible with students is really, really important. Happy to share these stats with anybody that needs them. There's a couple of PDFs. As I said before, in March, early April, we started running student webinars for the first time. One stat that amuses me from this year is that our turn-up rate from those registered for our student webinars is higher than our university employee kind of careers service and our employer-facing webinars. So students are more reliable than the grown-ups when it comes to turning up, which always makes me laugh. But in all seriousness, we've had some real success with delivering content, hosted content for employers, talking directly to relevant groups of students about opportunities, how to make great applications, what they're looking for. We've run some, a particular healthcare employer springs to mind, where they had a real mix of a leadership team, the recruitment team, and grads already on program, talking about what it's like to work there. It's been very, very useful for them. This one, apologies if it's a little bit blurry, but as in two different question sets, one out to employers and one out to students, we asked people to rate the suitability of different activities to be delivered online. I guess this was born of that kind of 84% of students would be okay with joining an organization that they've never met before, in this kind of new post-COVID or semi-post-COVID world. So we see there that interviews, assessments, all good. There's kind of consensus across the student and employer population, and careers fairs consensus there too, that they're all suitable things to be delivered in the online environment. And I would point your attention to internships. Students are almost twice as likely to believe that an internship is possible in the online space as opposed to employers. And that brings me on, so how do we kind of close that gap? How do we figure it out? And I will share with you that one of the things that some employers have been doing is creating a virtual internship program. We actually worked with an organization this year called Forage, and with our partners, content partners at DBL, to create a work-ready virtual experience program. That program, I checked last night, we've had close to 3,500 students go through that kind of soft skills development program that has been working really well for them. The satisfaction levels with it are really great. And Forage has been working with a number of banks, law firms and consulting firms to develop virtual internship programs that really are supporting that kind of attraction piece of early talent. So first and second year students who can engage with little or no kind of effort impact on the organization, but can engage with real tasks and get an understanding of what your culture's about prior to making applications or thinking about real world internships or grad programs. So I would encourage those who are looking at building quite a significant talent pipeline to perhaps explore what those virtual internship programs are looking like, and whether it might be right for you to investigate. As I said, we've gone live on the website this year too, with a variety of different webinar formats, hosting them for clients, live chat sessions on the website coming for peak season in 2021. And this kind of idea of a very kind of informal kind of drop-in webinar session where you can meet and greet with leaders or those on current grad programs, and kind of use technology to connect in a way that you haven't before. Speaking of which, that brings me on, I guess, to the last piece for today's session, and that is our National Virtual Careers Fair. So on March 5th, 9th and 12th next year, GradConnection has partnered with some technology out of Germany called Meet You to create a 3D world where employers become avatars. So we basically take a full-length picture of the recruitment team in a hirer, and we upload them into their customized booth. And then we have a virtual convention center, if you will, where students are free to come over the 3 days and engage with avatars in real time on the booths and find out more about what it's like to work for a particular place. Through the booth, you'll be able to apply to jobs if they're live, or add yourself to applicant tracking systems. We've got clients looking at running online interview technology through the booth as well. It's super exciting, really leveling the playing field for students and graduates from all over the country, or who have perhaps returned home, having studied in Australia, but still looking for work at home and overseas. A real level playing field for access to this National Careers Fair. At present, we've got about, I think, 23 of the 42 Australian universities are working with us to invite students to attend on those 3 days. And very soon we'll be announcing that some universities have decided to use that technology in partnership with us to run their own exclusive days as well. So that, this is for, if you've got entry-level roles or graduate roles or internship opportunities coming up that you are looking for applicants for, candidates for in 2021. This is a great opportunity. I was speaking to a healthcare provider yesterday who's based up in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and they'll be using this technology and opportunity to connect and start building a talent pipeline for the next few years. We are expecting somewhere in the region of sort of 10 to 15,000 students register for the event, and fingers crossed, if everything works out, we'll be achieving sort of 70–80% of those turning up to the technology. So really interesting opportunity. There you go. That's a little bit of what it looks like. And that brings me to the end of today's presentation with a few minutes to spare. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Feel free to use the Q&A box or the chat box. Okay. Doesn't look like anybody's got any questions today, which is totally fine. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's been a real pleasure to share some of what's been going on for us this year. If I can be of any assistance, please do reach out, james@gradconnection.com. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye for now.